From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I am your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast, Dibes. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Dibes, how are you doing today?
Doing well, man. This is about to get extremely exciting with the college football playoff, the Senior Bowl on the horizon, the draft process. Everything's in front of us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. I'm also joined by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, how are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, it's a first for us with this kind of college football playoff to see how it impacts kind of the big board for the draft, because used to be there was just one bowl game, or if you made the 14 playoff, you had two games, but there's some guys who could potentially play 4 games, if not 3 games. So could be really interesting to see how this kind of affects the big board in terms of how the first round stacks out.
Yeah, it's also just interesting that it feels like for a lot of years, we've just talked about the excess number of snaps that NFL players play. And so you hit that rookie wall. But for some of these guys, they're going to play 4 postseason games. I mean, that's only going to be 2 teams, but still, a lot of these teams are just going to tack on extra games. And it's sort of a bit of an on-ramp into, hey, this is maybe a little bit what NFL life is like. Obviously not playing against all NFL players, but the snap counts and how that impacts guys as a rookie will be interesting to follow over the next few years. So, okay, well, let's dive into it. Changing up the format a little bit for this week. It feels wrong to pick a game of the week out of 4 college football. What is the word for before quarterfinal? We'll just go with first round. It feels wrong to pick one of these 4 games for a game of the week. So we're not going to do prospect profiles this week. We're just going to briefly talk about all 4 games from the first round of the college football playoff. And so we'll go in chronological order. We will kick off with the first game. It is Friday night at 8:00. Indiana travels to Notre Dame to take on Mark's Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The winner of that game will advance to the quarterfinal and play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Mark, I got to throw it to you first. Talk to me about Notre Dame and what you see in this matchup.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Indiana-Ohio State matchup that we saw a couple weeks ago, and that game was a home game there for Ohio State. This game's a home game for Notre Dame. It's going to be difficult for Indiana to match kind of Jimmy's and Joe's with Notre Dame. At a certain point, it stops being about the X's and O's. Curt Cignetti's done a great job coaching Indiana. I don't know if it's going to matter in terms of the physicality on the line of scrimmage with Notre Dame's offensive line in particular. Ohio State was able to really, really run the ball and just out-physical Indiana. Even Michigan, who was not a good football team this year, went 7-5, even with the Ohio State win at the end of the year, not a good football team. And when Indiana played them, they gave them a game, and they really kind of out-physicaled them as well. And Notre Dame, I think, is even more physical than both of those teams, with an even better offensive line than both of those teams. So I think the key to this game will be Jeremiah Love just breaking free in the running game, kind of dominating. Riley Leonard not making any mistakes. I think he just kind of has to be a guy who can get us some yards on the ground with his legs, make a couple plays when he needs to on third down with his arm, don't turn the ball over, and hand the ball off to Jeremiah Love. And this should be a win.
Mark, are you wearing an Army beanie?
Yeah. And people are going to say, like, oh, you can't wear that when Notre Dame plays Army. I'm supporting the troops. I don't know. It's a comfy beanie.
What's the story here? How did you end up with an Army beanie?
Army Navy plays in Philly. They don't anymore, actually. They played there for a long time. We used to go with some family members of Caroline's, my wife's, who are in the Army. So we've become an Army supporting family. He actually did the flyover in
nice.
fighter jets over the game in 2021, I think it was. Maybe 2019. It was either right the year after or the year before COVID. But Yeah, it was a wild scene. Army Navy game for anyone out there in the cities that they're played. Really, really cool event to go to.
Okay, cool. I gotta ask because that doesn't fit with like the Phillies attire you've got on. So I was
That's
curious.
fair. I don't think I also never wear this. Like it's a beanie that I kind of just found at the back of the closet, and I was like, I should wear this one.
Yeah, you should. I like it. It's got a cool look. But all right, Mr. Dibes. I almost called you Mr. Crockpot, and I don't know why. Indiana Notre Dame. What are you looking at here? Is Mark being a homer? What are your thoughts on this one?
By the way, Mark gets extra points this week because that is the cutest dog that's just cowering behind him.
She makes frequent appearances on Chalk Talk these days. She likes to come hang out with us, and she gets mad at me sometimes when I slander Tua, but
straight up adorable. All right. So yeah, Curtis Work no longer underrated. It's all going to go down to him. Indiana has a really well-balanced team in general. I've been on the Curtis Rourke bandwagon, the Curtis Rourke train, whatever you want to call it, all season long. But yeah, like Mark said, he's going up against an Irish opportunistic defense that it is imperative for Curtis Rourke to avoid any giveaways in this one. You look at the Notre Dame defense, it's one that leads the nation in takeaways, led by Xavier Watts, one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He's got 5 interceptions, a ridiculous quarterback rating when targeted of 30.4. Notre Dame also has a freshman corner named Leonard Moore, who might be the next great one. He's a phenomenal run defender, really kind of took the mantle when Benjamin Morrison went down with a season-ending injury. And the guy that I would love to pick Mark's brain about, that's really on my radar because I'm working on my top 10 defensive tackles, is a guy named Riley Mills. I'm very much aware of Howard Cross, but Riley Mills, 6'5", 300 pounds. Bruce Feldman's freak list last year. 2 years ago, he only had 2.5 sacks, 5.5 for loss, tackles for loss. But this year, man, he's got 33 pressures, 7 sacks, 19 run stops. Riley Mills might be a guy to watch. But you said everything I wanted to say. I think the physicality of Notre Dame is going to be too much for Indiana. So Indiana basically has to play a perfect game. But I'm going to go Notre Dame with the W.
All right.
Yeah, 6.5 sacks from Mills. The whole D line has really stepped up, and obviously everyone knows about Cross, but he's definitely he's been their best pass rusher, to be honest, even above Cross.
So you guys both have Notre Dame moving on to face Georgia in the Sugar Bowl?
Yep.
For sure.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling. By the way, Notre Dame favored by 7.5 in that game. Let's move on to the noon game on Saturday. Number 11, the 11 seed SMU travels to Penn State to play the 6th seed. Penn State is favored by 8.5 in this game. And then the winner of that game will play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. I'm curious to see if I'm glad the playoff brings group of 5 schools into the picture. I'm curious to see if they just become first round blowout games every year, though. There's a fine line between like diluting the product too much and getting in the teams that deserve it. So I'm excited for the expanded playoff, but I am really interested just to see how this first round of games go and if we get some really good ones. Dives, when you look at SMU Penn State, do you expect this to be a good game? What are you kind of watching for?
Obviously, this is the Abdul Carter show. He has been lights out to finish the season. And that's what Penn State's all about. Their pass rush versus quarterback Kevin Jennings. If you don't know who Kevin Jennings is, he's a guy that stepped in for Preston Stone, who suffered a season-ending injury during the season. Him and Preston Stone kind of were battling it out until Jennings was named the starter in week 4. And since then, he's got the nation's 4th best passing grade per PFF. Enter Abdul Carter, who ranks third in the FBS and PFF pass rush grade. He has been, I'm pretty sure he won the Big Ten Player of the Year. I could be wrong about that. But he has been really dynamic. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously, the guy that we have talked about 1,000 times on mock drafts, on other shows, is Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren has been Penn State's best offensive player by a huge margin. He's got over 1,000 receiving yards. That easily leads all Power 4 tight ends. Amazing after the catch. He's not just big. He's extremely versatile. He can play that wildcat quarterback role. He can get yards on the ground. Slowing down Tyler Warren has to be the top priority for SMU's defense. But I got Penn State winning by 2 scores.
All right. So Dibes has Penn State in a blowout. Mark, what do you think about this one?
I think it's going to be a shootout. I think that there's going to be a lot of points on the board. If there's any of the games out of the 4 that I would take the over in, it would be this one. And the total sitting at around 53.5. I'd like the over there. And I think that I'm a little bit skeptical of Penn State's defense. I have some concerns about everyone just kind of lists them as one of the best defenses in the country. And I thought that at the beginning of the year. I mean, giving up 45 to Oregon in a game where Oregon got really conservative in the second half of that game. Like, I think Oregon could have hung a 50 burger on them for sure. Gave up 25 to a bad Minnesota offense that can't run the football. They gave up 30 to USC in a game that they went to overtime with them. Even Bowling Green early in the year put up 27. Like, I think SMU will be able to score. And you look at SMU, they've scored 38 plus in 5 straight games. Like, obviously worse competition and worse defenses than you'll see with Penn State. But I think SMU is going to be able to put up points and hang with Penn State. I think this is going to be like a 35-31 Penn State win. I think Penn State wins it close. I would say that there's going to win, but I am betting SMU +9. That line's actually down to 8.5 now. I would still take that, but I think it's going to be within a touchdown.
All right. So Mark thinks this one's going to be a little closer, but they both have Penn State moving on. Let's go to Saturday at 4:00. Number 12 Clemson at number 5 Texas. This one has the biggest spread of all of the games. It's an 11.5 point favorite. Texas is favored by 11.5 points. The winner will move on to play Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. Mark, how do you feel about this game?
This is actually the one that I have the least opinion on when it comes to the spread. I think 11.5 points is just so many points. I think there's a reason for that spread. Texas is the way better team. But the weird thing about Texas is we also don't really know what they are. You look at the schedule that they've played. The best win is the last time we saw them, or I guess they played in the SEC title game. Excuse me. Obviously went to the overtime with Georgia, but their last regular season game, probably their best win against Texas A&M on the road. A Texas A&M team that ended up going 8-4. So it's not like they have this legit stamp them as legitimate win. So I'm pretty low on Clemson, which is why I lean towards Texas getting the job done. But Texas hasn't shown me enough to show me that they should be favored by 11.5 and that I can lay the 11.5. If I was going to bet it, it would be Texas. But outside of, maybe throwing Texas money lines at some parlays, I won't be betting this one.
All right. Dibes, what about you? Thoughts on Texas, or is Texas legit? Do we just not know? How do you think this game is going to play out?
Yeah, I'm right there with Mark. I am not the biggest fan of Quinn Ewers. He's been up and down, shaky all season long. Clemson's defense is really solid. They are tied with Notre Dame for the second best turnover margin in the nation. They do a great job creating opportunities for its offense. There's a sophomore, TJ Parker, who's kind of developed into one of the best pass rushers in the nation. 49 pressures, 12 sacks. You look at Peter Woods. We'll be talking about him, not this year, but most likely in the 2026 NFL draft. Another interior defender, big-time pass rusher. And on the other end, Quinn Ewers, man, his play has been good in one half, bad in the next half. And if Ewers protects the football, Texas could probably go all the way, but Texas could be in for a long game against Clemson, who has some pretty decent players like Barrett Carter. That's definitely a name to know, a linebacker that's probably what was getting a lot of first-round buzz during the last year's draft process, decided to return and kind of dropped a little bit. I still think he's like a day 2 guy at this point in time, but Texas's defense is legit. I mean, Anthony Hill Jr., a linebacker, is outstanding. One of my favorite guys, not draft eligible, but Jahdae Barron, a nickelback, is one of my favorite players in this draft as well. He has 5 picks. He's broken up 6 others this season. He's allowed more than 40 yards in the coverage just one time this season, and by far one of the best nickel corners in the entire class. So he's basically my Mike Samra still. I think he's going to be a late first round, early second round pick. I think he's going to climb up the draft boards. Keep an eye out for that. In the end, I do think Texas wins, but I have actually more confidence that Penn State wins by more points than Texas wins in this game.
That's fair.
All right. Let's move on to the final game. Also a touchdown spread. So there's not a game this weekend that doesn't have a touchdown spread, but it's number 9, Tennessee, at number 8, Ohio State. Ohio State is favored by 7. The winner gets the chance to move on to the Rose Bowl and play Oregon. Dibes, talk to me about this one.
Yeah, and Nico Iamaleava, I trust. I love this guy. I've been on his, just like Curtis Rourke, I've been a big fan of his all season long. Really came out this season on fire, then struggled in the middle of the season, then really played well to finish out the season. He's a guy that can, get extra yards, kill defenses in that intermediate range. And where I'm looking at, I mean, there's a couple of matchups here. I don't have one matchup to watch. I have 2. And it's funny because both are basically the same, just in reverse. Leading off, Ohio State's defense versus the Tennessee O-line. Ohio State has some pass rushers like Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, that are fantastic, while the Tennessee O-line isn't that great. They've improved their run blocking the last 2 games of the season against UTEP and Vanderbilt, but in the losses against Arkansas and Georgia, they were absolutely destroyed in pass protection. And Ohio State is fantastic in this area. Another guy to mention, Tyleik Williams on the inside. The Buckeyes' chances at a national title begin and end with that defensive line. And then on the flip side, you've got James Pierce Jr. for Tennessee, who is fantastic. Probably a top 10 pick when all is said and done. He's a guy that can single-handedly take over a game. The Vols also have another edge rusher in Joshua Josephs, who has really come on strong on the other end for the Volunteers. And the Buckeyes' offensive line is easily on the struggle bus right now. They've been in complete disarray in recent weeks. So it really is all about who can generate the most pass rush and which offensive line plays better. I'm going to go Tennessee gets the W in this one.
All right. So Dibes is picking the upset here, taking Tennessee to survive and move on to the quarterfinal. Mark, what about you? What's your call out on this game?
I think this is as close to 50-50 as it gets. I think it's a total toss-up. I'm throwing out a game of the year on Tennessee plus 7.5. I love Tennessee plus 7.5. It's a 7-unit play for me. My biggest play of the college football season. But I just think that this is going to be a low-scoring, drag them out, kind of 17-14, 20-17 type win. These are 2 of the best defenses in college football, potentially the best 2 in the field, in my opinion. And I have a take already, and I can already tell this is going to be an off season of people yelling at me about it. Abdul Carter is gotten pushed up to be like, I saw, I don't know who it was at ESPN, but someone has him number 1 overall. I don't know if that was Kuiper or Field or just their regular rankings? What
Ruler.
sorry? Who was it?
It was I always butcher the last name, Dane Bruler.
Oh, Dame Ruler. Okay. Yeah, I saw that they put out a rankings where Abdul Carter was 1 overall. I like Abdul Carter. I don't get this push that he's become like a top 1, top 3, top 5 pick. Like, I think he's more of a fringe top 10 guy. Whereas I think if you're going to push an edge rusher up the draft boards, why isn't it James Pierce? I feel like coming into the year, he was in the conversation for the number 1 pick. He's having pretty much the same year he had last season, maybe slightly less sack production, 10 sacks in 13 games last year, 7.5 in 12 this year. I think James Pierce has been even better this year than last year. He's on a way better unit. That entire Tennessee defensive line is eating aside from him, and it's because of him. And I think James Pierce is a big X factor in this game. Ohio State has had some injuries up front on that offensive line. I don't think that this is the blue chip 5-star offensive line that Ohio State went out and paid for in the offseason. And I think you're going to see it against Tennessee. And I hate to even bring this type of thing up because, I like this, what we're doing, breaking down the matchups, talking about the numbers, talking about, the X's and O's on the field. But I do think it's worth bringing up that there's a good chance that if Ohio State gets down early, I think there's some quit in this team. The way that Ryan Day has, instilled kind of like a coward's mentality in that locker room. And I think you see it in everything that happened in that Michigan game and everything that happened in the aftermath. And the last time that I've seen a lot of, they're going to bounce back from this for sure. They won't get embarrassed again after losing to Michigan. Last time that they lost this year, they lost a 1-point game. No shame in losing to Oregon by 1. But they came out the next week. Everyone thought they'd come out angry. They beat Nebraska 21-17 at home. They were like a 17-point favorite. They almost lost the game outright. I just don't know if this team has the fight that you need in kind of a tough matchup with a really good team in Tennessee.
Ryan Day is coaching for his life.
Absolutely.
Big time. It's crazy to say. Like, you could say James Franklin is too, but Ryan Day 1,000 times more.
He might need to win 4 games.
Really?
I don't know. I don't know how. I think if he makes the championship game, he'd be fine. If he beat Tennessee and beat Oregon, but then you lost to Texas, I don't know.
They've been dysfunctional, man, all season long. They've not been good enough on offense. One Eagles target I do want to throw out. We all know about Caleb Downs. He's terrific. One of the best, if not the best, defensive player in the country. Lathan Ransom is a really solid prospect, safety for Ohio State. He's a big guy. He's a really good run defender. And Shane, over the last 4 years, Lathan Ransom has played at least 9 games every season for the Buckeyes. I know we're still reeling from Sidney Brown and his inability to stay on the football field. But Ransom does stay on the football field. Keep an eye out, Eagles fans, for Lathan Ransom.
I wonder, you guys mentioned coaches coaching for their job here. I do wonder, do you think the college football playoff is going to lead to more coaches losing jobs? Because it's a lot easier to get into the 12-team playoff and prove that you can't win it versus like you get left out of the 4-team and it's like, well, we didn't get our shot. And I don't know. Do you think that's a real thing? Like, are you going to see more turnover in these high-profile programs as coaches kind of prove that they can't get over the hump?
Yeah, because I think before you finish 7th and you're able to claim, like, what a season. We went 10-2. Like, because there isn't something you can point to as the definitive end of your season. You went 10-2 and you didn't make the 14 playoff, and you went to a bowl that a million guys opted out of. Like, there are definitive ends to seasons now. And I think that will change the way that the sport's covered. And, you see it in the NFL. If a guy can't, reach a certain level with a really good team, he's going to get let go, even if he's won a lot of games. And you see it in college basketball. But what college basketball has done is now that these coaches, I feel like, really kind of making the tournament an accomplishment and making the Sweet 16 such a big accomplishment, that instead of being killed when you lose in the Elite Eight or the Sweet 16, you kind of get propped up for having those accomplishments on your board. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
The talent level on Ohio State is ridiculous. I mean, they had an insane amount of draft eligible guys return this season. And yeah, I mean, if they lose, holy cow.
You mentioned Eagles targets, by the way, just a couple names to throw out for receivers, because I do think you look at the Eagles list of needs. Like, I still think, well, I've been saying it for I don't know how many years we've been doing this, but I still think wide receiver 3 is high on that list. And a couple names, Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, he'd be an interesting name to watch here. Isaiah Bond from Texas in the Texas Clemson game, he's been disappointing. I think statistically this year, maybe you can pin that on Quinn Ewers. And yeah, you're putting up Egbuka there. A lot of similarities to JSN, can really thrive in the slot. Maybe an interesting fit with the Eagles, obviously. And then some other kind of some other receivers that are out there that could potentially be maybe a little bit lower on the list. But Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson from Oregon. That's not this weekend. That's going forward. But there's a good amount of receivers to keep an eye on in this college football playoff if you're like me and you're kind of jonesing for less Jahan Dotson and Johnny Wilson.
I love Tez. You guys remember how much I was like in love with like a Tank Dell. Tez is going to blow up the draft process, man. He's got so much juice. He's so fun.
And I saw a comment earlier from Quentin. I think if you made me, let's all make a pick, I guess, on the bracket. I'm gonna say Oregon beats Notre Dame in the national championship. Even though I think it should be Oregon Georgia, but I'll be a homer and say Oregon Notre Dame.
I was Oregon as well, and I think I was Oregon over Penn State or Georgia. One of those two.
Got a really easy path, yeah.
So I don't remember. I did this like a couple weeks ago. It might have been Penn State. I don't know.
It's got to be one of Penn State, Georgia, or Notre Dame, pretty much.
What about Boise State?
Nah.
No
They're
shot.
great.
Ashton Genty, I should have won the Heisman Vengeance Tour.
I think that there are only 6 teams who can even make the college football championship. It's Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee. I guess there's 7. I apologize. Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, Notre Dame, Georgia, Penn State. Wait, that's 7. That was a bad job by me counting with my fingers. But there's 5 teams: SMU, Indiana, Arizona State, Boise State, Clemson. Those teams don't have a chance of winning more than 1 game, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. We could like package this little segment as like a Sesame Street alternative. Mark teaches kids how to count. Like, we could have a lot of fun with that.
You make a pick, Shane. You picking Texas? Horns up?
No, I mean, I feel like Oregon. It's going to be, as an Oklahoma guy, it's going to be so funny to see Oregon if they go like win the national championship with Dylan Gabriel and after all the things that transpired with OU this year. But if I had to pick, I would probably say like Oregon. Oh crap! Which side of the bracket? I just have
Oregon
the individual.
plays the winner
games.
of Ohio State, Tennessee, and the winner of that game will probably play Texas.
Yeah, I'd probably say Oregon comes out. Hold on, I'm going to look at the bracket. Oregon comes out. I mean, it feels lame to say Oregon, Georgia, but I kind of feel like that's what it's headed for. Like, that's not spicy, number 1, number 2, but that's just kind of what it feels like we're headed for.
Did you guys know they have the second round lines out on DraftKings for the potential spreads? Notre Dame, Georgia. Notre Dame minus 2.5 right now.
I remember vividly, like 8 weeks ago, Mark was so out on Notre Dame. It was crazy.
Well, they did lose to what, Northern Illinois or something like that.
They lost to Northern Illinois, who's playing in like the Frisco Bowl against Fresno State coming up in a couple of days. Since that game, they've won the game by 30. They've won their games by an average of 30.8 points per game. Since that, they're just steamrolling teams. And I think Penn State has the easiest path but I'm going to say that the winner of Notre Dame Georgia beats Penn State. I just don't know who wins that game. I'm going to be a homer and say Notre Dame. I kind of like we all have a different Oregon. I'll go Oregon Notre Dame. Dives is Oregon Penn State. Shane can take Oregon Georgia. We all have Oregon to win.
I think Oregon's shown me the most consistency. I love their D line, like Derek Harmon, Birch. Those guys are like 6'5" beasts. Like I really like Oregon just offensively. Like the way they attacked Penn State with Tez Johnson was really impressive. Penn State had no answer. They looked foolish. Outside of that, I have major question marks pretty much about every team in this college football playoff, even Texas, even like everybody. Georgia's beatable. It's just really going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it, guys. Our first round college football playoff preview. Stuff's weird with Christmas next week, but also the games are later. So we'll try to get back in the feed later on with a college football quarterfinal preview show, but hopefully we can get Ryan on with us then. Ryan just wasn't available tonight, but thank you guys for joining in with the show. I hope you guys do all have a great Christmas, safe travels if you're traveling to visit friends, all of those things. But thank you for tuning into the podcast. Thank you for tracking along with our Eagles coverage this year. We really appreciate it. Be sure you follow these guys on Twitter. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. I'm at Shane Half NFL. And we'll catch you guys next time.